And it's appropriate we're talking about and working our way to what is Jesus, probably his most powerful miracle, the raising of Lazarus from the dead. This is the last account in John 11 of Jesus' ministry prior to entering his last week. It's interesting, almost half of the Gospel of John is spent dealing with the last week of Jesus' life, the bulk of that really being the night before his betrayal and crucifixion. Again, outside of his own resurrection, probably the most powerful miracle he did was the raising of Lazarus. And we've had it read a couple of points up to this juncture. We're not at the raising of Lazarus yet. I was laughing. I don't know if we'll get him out of the tomb next week or the week after. He was only 4 days in the tomb, but he's going to be about a month in the tomb for us. So sorry about that. But last week we saw that Jesus received word Lazarus was sick. And so he waited 2 additional days, and then he was going to go up to Jerusalem, or to Bethany, which is right near Jerusalem. And when he told that to his disciples were like, they were just trying to kill you there. You don't need to go up. He goes, no, we need to go. I need to go and wake Lazarus up. And they go, well, if he's asleep, then he's going to get better. And so he has to, the disciples never get it, right? And so he goes, he's dead. And I'm going. And I'm glad this happened for your sakes, because God's going to be glorified in it. And so then he goes up. We see that this time. And as he's going, Martha comes out to meet him. And it's interesting, the character you see with Martha and Mary fits what was there in Luke 10. Remember in Luke, that's the other time that Jesus is mentioned being with Martha and Mary. And what's Martha doing? All the busyness. That's it. She's the doer, right? And what's Mary doing? She's sitting at Jesus' feet. And Martha, being the older sister, comes out and goes, Jesus, tell Mary to come help me. And Jesus goes, Martha, you're worried about so many things, but only one's necessary. Mary's chosen the good thing, and that's not going to be taken from her. So Mary was the sitter, Martha was the doer, and here who goes out to meet Jesus? Martha. She's the doer. What's Mary doing? This keeping in character with who they are, it's all right. And Lazarus has been in the tomb now 4 days. 4 days, and specific note is made of that, and it's important because in Jewish lore, they believe that the spirit sort of hovered around the body for 3 days. They believe that, hoping that what? There'd be revival with it. But once the body began to decay, shoom, the spirit took off and there was no hope. So that's the time frame that they're going here. Now, that wasn't true. We know that as soon as you die, your spirit goes to either be with God or not, right? Condemnation. But this was what they believed, and John's making a point here, that Lazarus was at the point beyond what any Jewish person would say they had hope, period. And the way their Jewish burial rites were different than ours. Here, people basically are either cremated now, or they're buried and embalmed, basically, put in a casket, put in a vault, put in the ground. In Jewish circles, the poor were put in the ground, and it was seen as a dishonor to walk over that. I think sometimes we have that sort of same type respect now. But if you had any means at all, you were buried in a cave, something carved out. And what they would do, most of them, it was a cave with something that would roll across the front that kept animals from going in and odor from coming out. And what they would do is when you died, they would put you on a board, and they would prepare the body with just spices. Oftentimes they'd tie the hands and the feet, just sort of bind them not tightly but loosely. And what they would do is prepare the body with myrtle and aloe and some rose oil. They might put a cloth over your face. They would carry you with poles. They had pallbearers back then. And they used euphemisms too. Like we go, they've gone to sleep. They would do the same type things. Rather than saying they just died, they would use all the euphemisms. They'd carry them to the tomb that had probably been prepared, that you would have bought it if long before you died. And what they'd do in this cave, it would be like a family burial plot, and they would carve out in the stone, which was not a real hard stone, shelves, and you'd be put on the shelf. And what would happen then for 7 days, they'd have professional mourners and then ones that just cared about you that would come out. It was rabbinic tradition. The rabbis taught that you honored the dead and that you consoled the survivors. That was a big deal. It wasn't a small thing to them. And sometimes there were paid mourners, and sometimes they were also accompanied with friends. And they would mourn by doing things like and shuffling their feet. And they'd break out sometimes into song, mournful songs. And they would do these things, and they would do this for about 7 days. And every day they'd make a trek out to the grave site. And when they left the grave site, what would they say? Depart in peace. And they'd go back to the house. And then the mourners and people would stay around the friends for about 30 more days, consoling. So, I mean, this death was, they were almost consumed with it. And it was a big part of their life. I don't know another way to put it. And this is where Jesus breaks into this, that fourth day, and Martha comes out to meet him, right? And what does Martha say first thing? If you'd been here. And it's not a rebuke. But you can imagine the house was full of people. Martha and Mary were the survivors. When they had time alone, you know what they would tell each other. If only Jesus had been here. If only Jesus had been here. Because both of them go out to him with the same exact remarks. So you know they had been saying that together. And she says that it's really sort of a word of faith more than a complaint. If you'd been here. What's Martha saying? He could have done something. It's not a full faith, but it's a faith. And so then Jesus goes, your brother will rise again. And Martha shows again faith. She goes, I know he's going to rise again in the resurrection on the last day. I know that. No doubt. And Jesus more specifically goes, I am the resurrection and the life. Gospel of John, Jesus makes 7 I am statements. And they're important. Everything in the scripture is important. But when Jesus goes, I am, that's extremely important. Matter of fact, the gospel is written so that you may know who Jesus is and believe who he is, and that believing have life in his name. You think about that when you meet another person and you go, hi, I am Steve. I'm telling you something about me. I am a pastor. I am a husband to Rachel. I'm telling you things about who I am. And in Jesus' I am statement, it's the same thing. He's telling you something about himself. Pardon me, this is why I'm not shaking hands. But when he goes, I'm the resurrection and the life, he's telling her something very distinctly about his character and about his person. And Martha gets it. She gives this great testimony of faith after that. She does. And then sends for Mary. And what I want to do is drill down in 2 things I want to look at. First, what it means for Jesus to be the resurrection and the life. That's fair. And the second is, I want us to look really at Martha's testimony, and I guess the struggle that has to be there when you live in a world that's got so much death and so much negative, but you're connected to the one who's the resurrection and the life. How do you walk in that kind of world? Does that make sense? So that's what we're going to look at. The first thing, I'm the resurrection and the life. Jesus said to her in John 11:20, well, it's 25 and 26. I have the wrong verse there. But Jesus said to her, I'm the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. And when he says that, these are not, I give the resurrection and the life, not I'm the source of it, but what does he say? I am that. There's a big difference with that. Everything is bound up with the person of Jesus. And I say this because sometimes we come to God and we just want the things from him. And we miss the greatest treasure, which is him. And that's what he's saying here. Martha's looking for that resurrection or that life for Lazarus. And Jesus is going, I'm that. And so he explains really what he means, resurrection and life, in the end of verse 25 and 26, and I want to look at that. He goes, he who believes in me, that's who it's directed to. This isn't everybody. This is there for those, Jesus is talking to his sheep, to the people that believe in him, and that's what we need to understand. It's not... I have a guy I listen to, he says, you know what it takes? I'm convinced the more funerals I go to, you know what it takes to be a Christian in America? Or to go to heaven if you're an American? You just need to die. Because at every funeral they go, well, they're so much better off now. And that's not the case. And this guy goes, I'm waiting for the funeral where it's for somebody who was really an obvious pagan, and that somebody gets up and goes, well, he's burning in hell. No. You don't want to do that, but it's more to it when you're writing about, and when Jesus goes, I'm the resurrection and the life, he's talking to those who belong to him and who have faith in him, and that's open. That call is there. And he goes, he will live even if he dies. He's talking about the general resurrection. There is a time when if Jesus doesn't return, every one of us is going to breathe our last, right? And our hope is that's not the end. We know because Jesus is the one who was resurrected from the dead, and he's gone to prepare a place for us. What do we have in heaven? We have a place. And we'll be with him for how long? Ever. And death will not ever finally lay hold of us and touch us. And we escape the wrath of God, which is bigger than death itself. And so we know that's what he's talking about. You live even if you're not. 1 Corinthians 15 that Rachel read indicates that. We see it again in John 5 earlier. Jesus brings this up. Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in the grave and the tombs will hear his voice, and will come forth, those who did good deeds to the resurrection of life, those who committed the evil deeds to a resurrection of judgment. Jesus points to that even earlier, right? There's a general resurrection that's coming, but there's also a lifting up of believers now, and there's a sense when he's the resurrection that it changes where we are now, does it not? It changes our perspective. Romans 6 speaks of that. So does Colossians chapter 3. If you've been raised with Christ, if you're a believer, have you been raised with Christ? You're united with Christ. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a believer, you're united to him. And that means you're connected. And as he's been raised, so have you. You've been raised up. Keep seeking the things above where Christ is seated. Before you were a follower of Jesus, you didn't have that perspective. Everything here is what grabbed your attention. Now you can sort of see above that. What we were talking about with the goodness of God, how can you sing about the goodness of God when you're going through an illness? I'll tell you how, because he's carrying you through it. How can you sing about the goodness of God when your bills are right here and your income's right here? You can do that because God is carrying you through that. Now, you got to apply some principles somewhere in there too, right? But, He is carrying you through it. And so the perspective's totally changed because God's raised us up. He's the resurrection. And He's done that. Death is not your master anymore. Friends, I've seen it with people that go, I don't know, I'm in such a bad thing, the only way out is death. I'm like, what, are you dumb? Death's not a way out. There's something greater than death. Jesus is. He's the resurrection for you. And He'll carry you through things. And He's not only the resurrection, but He's the life. And John earlier tells us that life itself's bound up with Jesus. It says, in Him was life. And this life was the light of men. We know where life is. It's bound up in who? So why is it that people get the idea that when you follow Jesus, you're sort of like, but they're really living? Why is that? They don't know Him. And sometimes we don't show Him. And I think that can be there. In Him was life. You think about it. Now everything's in perspective. Our life is in Him. The author of life. We don't have to search and wonder. We don't have to try to find what tastes in this world because we know what does in Him. The world knew it and they fell away. The world didn't know Him, and now Jesus has come and restored that again, has He not? Through faith in Him, we have that life through union with Christ. When I was reading in Colossians 3, Christ who is our life. Let me ask you a question. What does that mean? How could Paul make this statement? When Christ who is our life, what does it mean for Jesus to be your life? Your life's no longer your own. You follow Him. There was never anyone more full of life than Jesus. Absolutely. What does it mean to have Him as your life? Huh? That's a hard one, isn't it? That's why I'm being quiet, going, oh, crud. You're supposed to tell us. No, we're turning this around. No. But Christ is your life. You see people in their life is their family. And family's wonderful, but it's a sorry life. And it's a sorry God. I see people whose job is their life. And I'm like, man, that's a sorry life. There's something bigger than all of that. And God is, and I think part of that is knowing, and this is different than where I planned on, it's knowing His love for you and your place with Him. Because so many times we try to do things in order to get affirmation and define who we are. I work hard where I'll be affirmed, where I'll have money, where I can do this, and I do this because... And it all deals with an insecurity in us, right? But when we know that God is our life, I have no insecurity. My whole world is secure in Him because what He says about me matters. And His first word to me is love and acceptance and forgiveness in Christ. And so when I talk about Him being in my life, He's my fullness. He's all in all. He's everything. And Paul, I think, hits it even greater than this one in Philippians 1:21. He goes, to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. To live is Christ. He was dealing with a church that needed Him, and that I need to be there for you, and that's my life, and this is my mission. Man, for me to live is Christ and I is gain. Better for you if I stay on, I probably will. To die is gain to be with him. And then Jesus, when he talks with Martha and he says, I'm the resurrection of life, he ends at the end of that, he doesn't just go, do you get it? He goes, do you believe this? Why?
If you believe in him, you'll be where he's at. He says that.
Yeah, it's sometimes we put Christianity as one of those things where it's a checkbox religion. I believe the Bible is true, check. I believe Jesus came, check. I believe he's the Son of God, check. I believe he died to take away sins, check. Now, how much of that has any personal impact on me? None, it's all here. And what he does, and that's not the way we have Christianity. What he does is he makes it very personal when he goes, do you believe this? Do you believe this? Is this something that you are willing to rely on and press into and to leave as your life? Do you? Yes, Jesus is the resurrection. I can tell you this stuff and I still believe him. Do I know and do I trust that Jesus is my life and my resurrection? Do I? Period. And Martha, of course, at that point, has a great testimony, doesn't she? She does. And where I want to end is the whole idea of Christ your corpse. You know, sort of. Martha had this going on in her. There were times her faith was here, wasn't it? And there were times that she couldn't get her eyes off Lazarus' dead body.
Yeah.
And I think we live in a similar place. We don't have Lazarus' dead body. Sometimes we have our dead past that we look to. Sometimes we have fear of the future, not trusting God that we look to. And I think at every point, the issue for us is that we're looking at Christ as a corpse, the same as it was for Martha. And when Martha, remarkable, do you believe this? And this is her testimony. She said to him, yes, Lord. I have believed that you're the Christ, the Son of God, not even he who comes into the world. I have believed. And I don't want to read much, but that's a perfect tense. And what the perfect tense means is it's something that's settled in the past that still has present impact. And that's what she's saying. I have believed this, and it's still something that shapes who I am. That's how our belief should be, isn't it? I believe that. You're the Christ, the Son of God, the Christ. This testimony of faith is right on par with John the Baptist in John 1, I think 29, where he goes, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Boom. It's on par with Peter in Matthew 16, where he goes, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Martha's testimony is right on par with that. She's soaring right here because her eyes are where? On Jesus. But man, there's that corpse that keeps drawing her attention back. So when she came out, she goes, if you've been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Even though I know whatever you ask, God will give to you. Whatever includes in the way she lived out, everything, but she had no idea about the resurrection, that he was going to be raised right there. The faith fell just short. There's another point with that where I love it. Even her testimony, I know he was on the last day. Your brother was again. She didn't go, great, let's go to the tomb. She said, I know you get resigned to what you see rather than who's in front of you. And then even when they go to the tomb, we're going to see this in some work too. When he goes to the tomb, and Jesus says, roll away the stone. What does Martha say? Yeah. Behold, he stinketh.
She knew her brother well. That faith wasn't quite there because the corpse was. So the great thing right now is Martha, through her faith in Jesus, is where? She's in heaven. With the one who's the resurrection in her life, and there's no corpse bothering her. But the question here for us, what's your Lazarus? What's your Lazarus? What is it? What's the corpse that's there that God needs to deal with in your life? That He can deal with? What is it? Is it shame in the past about what you've done? Is it hurt from what other people have done to you? Is it anxiety about something that could happen in the future? If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, He's the resurrection and the life. And it's time to get rid of Lazarus. We're going to do that in a couple of days or weeks. But it's time to in our life. Are you going to follow Christ and just look at Him and have Him literally be your life and everything?
Head west
Because He loves you so much. Or are you going to keep looking at the course and be held back?